All right, welcome everyone to another episode of uh well, I guess it's not another episode, but it's going to be maybe part of a series. We're calling it The Bear as Art. And today, Joseph, my good friend Joseph, and I will be focusing on the television show The Bear. Uh this is kind of maybe a continuation, the first in the continuation of uh a series looking at pop culture and TV and movies, maybe as art. Joseph and I did many episodes looking at the television show Andor as art, which you can see on the podcast feed, wherever it is, the Substack feed. And as a follow up to that, Joseph has convinced me to watch a TV show that he loves, The Bear, and it's in its fourth season, maybe going into its fifth season, but we are going to be focusing on season one, which is what I recently finished watching. So we'll be discussing season one of The Bear. Now, the first part of the discussion, we won't get into any spoilers. So if you haven't seen it, you'll get a setup before it and you'll get our general feelings about it. And then we'll get into the meat of the story. We'll get into the conflicts, the deeper meaning, and maybe what we gain from it. And then Joseph, who loves the show, who's seen everything, will and is excited to share why he loves it with me, is going to make a pitch for continuing to watch the show for me. All right. So Joseph, I'd like to kind of hand it off to you and for you to kind of share and describe maybe why you really wanted to discuss this show, why you consider it as something that is artistic, and why you have been trying to get me to watch it. I guess maybe for a couple of years now, maybe. All
Yeah,
right,
I
go
like
for it,
how you
Joseph.
put it that I convinced you to watch it. I think that was putting it kindly. Maybe dragged you kicking and screaming a little bit.
Well,
Well, I hope it was worth it. Um, so when we did the Andor series, one of the first episodes we did was before season two came out, was why people should treat Andor as art and high art. And in our Andor discussions, we did talk a little bit about what separates Andor from just entertainment and crosses it over into art. And so one of the things I really want to try and do in this episode, to start at least, is make the case that the bear is also art, and that the bear is worthy of a watch, and even uh, if you're on the fence about it. And I will say as a disclaimer, the first time I watched The Bear, and I feel like you because you probably watch it. I've watched Andor multiple times, but you've really watched it. But I've watched The Bear now at least three times, at least season one three times. And the disclaimer is the first time I watched it, season one didn't hook me. Like I was interested. I watched the whole season. I found it entertaining. It wasn't until the end of season two that I was obsessed. Um, but upon rewatching season one, my a few times and rewatching the rest of the season, my love has just grown. It's transcended for me. So the kind of first thing I'll just say as the disclaimer is I don't expect the bear on the first watching to be particularly like mind blowing necessarily, at least just season one. And so that'll be like that's I think an important backdrop. But like the short goals notes of what Andor or sorry, what the bear is for me. Because I was thinking like, do I like it more than Andor? Is it? And I realize it's a different it serves a different purpose. Um, Andor is broader in scale. It's dealing with this societal level um, idea of tyranny and rebellion and individuals as they fit into it. The bear zooms in on individual characters and relationships and personal growth. And so the the Andor is this contemplative experience for me of art as presenting philosophical ideas versus the and so it's thought provoking and interesting from that perspective as art. The bear is nourishing, right? It fuels my soul, right? In terms of the humor in it, the insights it has into human nature and individuals, but it's zoomed in much more into the individual. For the objectivist listening, it kind of to me is like the difference between the Fountainhead and Atlas Shrugged in some ways. Fountainhead is much more zoomed in on like yourself as a character and seeing different types of people and contrasting it versus Atlas Shrugged gets a little bit broader philosophically. And so for me, the bear just serves a different purpose. And a couple of things I wrote down of like what I love so much about it is it's just a love letter to so many things, to human growth, to Chicago. I love Chicago so much. And so they were just so in season one and then in the future season, it's just such a love letter to the city of Chicago and some of the things that make it so wonderful. It's a love letter to fine dining and just hospitality in general, which I love. Like I love, and I'm curious if you like, I don't know how much what your relationship to fine dining is, and that's something I want to get into, but I love eating out. And so that's when it's just a love letter to all these things I care about so much. So
Oh,
that's
may
my
I
intro.
jump in and
Yeah.
interrupt for a moment here because I want to set up a little bit of what the show about in case you're starting this and wondering what is the bear about. Uh,
Yes. I'm so excited.
and
I'm just
but no, the excitement is great. So okay, Joseph, let me know what you think. I wrote down kind of the premise, tried to formulate it in terms of the main character and the main conflict and what's at stake. Well, maybe not necessarily. Yeah, a little bit of what's at stake. Okay, so I've got so contemporary show, a world-class chef returns home to, as you mentioned, Chicago, the rough streets of Chicago, to run his family's sandwich shop. Like grungy sandwich shop. World-class chef comes back to his hometown to run his family's sandwich shop uh, in a rough part of Chicago after his brother, who was the owner of the shop, unexpectedly dies and leaves it to him in his will. Okay, so that's the setup. Does that sound right?
yeah.
And and then from there we get maybe the conflicts that kind of seep out of that setup. Here's a world-class chef, Carmy, who is used to a level of professionalism, who is very talented, who's also very passionate about food, and he's encountering a family business that has been doing things one way for years, decades maybe, with people who have been working there for a long time, and he's trying to run this place and encountering the resistance that comes from this is not the way we do things around here. And so you've got this clash of two work expectations, two sets of values in the workplace. One, let's make things really good and efficient and professional. The other one is this is a community type of deal. We're all a family here. We've got the system that we've been doing with. Don't mess with the system. And so you've got at least at the outset of season one, especially this clash. So I'm curious with that as a setup, just in general, kind of you're talking about like the love letters like to Chicago and then to working in the restaurants. What is it about the feel of the show? You say it's like nourishing to you to watch it, probably because of a lot of the character moments. But when you start watching it, why do you enjoy watching it?
So I love the style. I love the humor in it is one thing that really stands out for me. I think the writing is just brilliant. The way they make it feel so real. Um, like the language they use, uh, like Richie in particular, some of the way he describes one of the characters, like the insults he'll throw. It just feels like the kind of real thing if you walked into this sandwich shop and they were just real, just like these characters that you could meet in real life. So it makes it easy to connect and easy to immerse yourself in the story. And it's funny and it's intense. But it's also like so pregnant with detail. And maybe I only caught this when I rewatched it because I'm not a super careful watcher. Like I kind of let things wash over me the first time. And the more times I watch it, the more details I pick up on how many breadcrumbs they're putting in for us to really fill out these characters. Um, and so those are some of the things, and just I love how it's shot. There's one scene where they're kind of following a dish throughout the kitchen, kind of later on, and it's just captivating to see to follow, and it really just emphasizes the kind of order that they're trying to bring to the chaos. So just little details like that. It's so detailed, and rich with all like color in terms of the characters and the dialogue. So all of those things get me hooked.
Yeah, I'll follow up on the point of like being in the world of the kitchen, where you get all this jargon about how they speak to each other, and it's very fast, and you there are lots of crumbs that you'll miss that are going through there, but it's all there intentionally. And and I'm curious, Joseph, have you ever worked in the food industry? Did you ever were you ever a waiter or a cook, or were you ever working in a restaurant or catering?
Well, the company I used to work for, we worked with restaurants a lot, and I would often go into the restaurants and do some of the jobs just to understand their environment so I could build better products. So I've been around restaurants for a long time and kind of gotten to be in different areas of the kitchen and never like fine dining, but
Yeah.
yeah, I've been around restaurants.
So with what this was what being in the kitchen here with the bear was making me think of personally is working at Milano's back in when I was
Mm,
22 years old, an Italian restaurant, and
okay.
I was a waiter there, and I loved it. I worked 6 months there. That's my only serving job that I ever did. But during that time, what I remember loving about it is everything was so fast paced, and there were a
Mhm.
million things going on at once. And I'm there. Yeah, I've got three or four tables that I've got to manage, and like who needs water, who needs ketchup, who needs the veal and whatever it is, and I'm going and communicating, and we've got all the jargon like behind or 86 oil or whatever it is that and it's fast, and my mind is racing constantly, and that's the thing that I really enjoyed about working in a restaurant, and also about the experience of the show for me.
Mm,
Everything is very fast. You got to pick things up. You're kind of thrown into this world of chaos behind the scenes that will get you your delicious brisket sandwich on the other end. And in the midst of the chaos of preparing for lunch, you've also got the dynamics of the characters and the jokes that you're talking about with Rich, who comes out with them, who loves to be a bon vivant, a raconteur, and you also start to get the seeds of the conflict that you kind of pick up on, and every kind of um, almost all the kind of dramatic dialogue that could be happening that would be normally like in an Ibsen play. I love Henrik Ibsen. Would be like two people in a quiet room having a conversation
right.
happens in the midst of the chaos of the lunch rush, and it's frenetic. So on the one hand, that really appealed to me. And I'll tell you, I want to tell you a little bit about how I started watching the show and why I stopped and why
Mm,
it took me a while to get back up, because I think this will touch upon something else about the show that actually it triggered me and made me think, oh, shoot. So the style is something that's pretty intense, but also in this intense atmosphere, you've got a lot of nerve-wracking situations. I know. Somebody forgets to turn off the pre-order system, and there are
yeah.
like 100 pre-orders that they need to get out in 8 minutes. They're like, what the hell are you gonna do? All right, or the bathroom like explodes, and there's sewage all over the place. What are you gonna do? Uh, it's so there's nerve-wracking situations that are created by the chaos, and how do you respond to that? Now, the particular nerve-wracking situation I got, and I think this speaks to where I am in my life. Now I'm a teacher, I'm an educator, so I get in front of groups of students, whether children or adults, and especially like on the first day of school. or
Mm,
something like that, I've got to motivate them. I've got to say, okay, I've got something that's going to be really valuable for you to do that would be very different than what you're used to. Whether it's, come with me on this tour at the art museum, and we're going to approach the art differently than you're used to. So I'm constantly encountering situations that maybe like Carmi does, where, all right, I want to present a new system to
mm,
people who might be resistant, a new way of doing things, or this, you're going to get value of this. And this brings me to the character of Sydney. And there was one moment, I think this happens in the second or third episode, where she's charged by Carmi, okay, you're going to institute a new
right.
way uh of organizing the kitchen and getting everybody to report to you. And it's fancy French term that doesn't roll off my tongue right now. And there's a moment where she gets all the kitchen staff together, and Carmi says, "All right, it's over to you. Tell them how about this." And she starts to say, and looks at him like kind of frightened, like, and she starts to speak about with this new thing that they're going to be doing, and everybody stares at her like, "What the fuck are you talking about? No,
Right.
we're not going to do this. We're not going to change." And it was that moment, Joseph, that I said, "Shoot, this is bringing back nightmares that I have of being in the front of and of being in a classroom and having the whole, group of students or adults kind of say, 'No, we're not going to pay attention to you. We have no interest.'" So that, like,
That
oh,
was
that's
that was where you stopped the first time?
that was where I stopped the first time.
Oh, really? I thought it was one of the way you had described me. I thought it was one of the crazier scenes because that was in
No,
the.
no, 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 no,
Oh,
no, no.
oh,
It's just a simple
interesting.
scene of trying to convince others, to motivate others, and she was like frozen for the moment, like, and had no interest. I said, "Whoa, this is too intense for me. I need to
Oh,
step back and to really like dedicate time
okay.
to let me sit down really and like really, okay, let me handle my emotions. I know I'm going to be encountering things that I'm will be unpleasant, and it's going to be
Mm,
for me in particular,
mm.
but I'm going to push through that." So, but there are benefits to that, of course, and great art, gets you into those modes that you might not be comfortable with. So often, like, the Bear is for winning the Emmys, it's in the comedy category, and it's not a sitcom. It's not like The Office or Parks and Rec, which are other workplace. It's it's maybe a dramedy, but an intense dramedy where you are thrown into situations where characters have strong feelings, have uh, strong internal conflicts that come out, that burst forth, that cause ruptures in the workplace as they're trying to get things prepped.
Keep going because my dog's barking.
Okay. So there you go. That's kind of the chaos that happens. It's like, oh, what's going on? Right. There's the dogs barking, uh, all kinds of stuff that's going on in the kitchen that happens that causes trouble that you have to figure out. Okay.
So, upon rewatching it, did you get over like what? Have you crossed that hump yet in terms of the tricky aspect?
Have I crossed the hump over that? Yes, but I've got to watch it in doses. For me, it's not something that's bingeable. It's a certain state of mind in watching it that I've got to be in, at least for this first season. I imagine for continuous seasons. All right, this is going to be intense, and it's going to be emotional, and I've got to like have a bit of a dose of it. It's like watching a really, it's not a dark drama, but if I were to watch a dark tragedy, I need something else afterwards. I can't have that continuously going. It's not something that's light. Um,
Right, and that's something that's a little maybe deceiving about it because the episodes are not very long, right? So
yeah,
it is bingeable in the sense of time, but they're so dense. At least what I found,
yeah,
and the first time I watched it, I wasn't expecting it, so I think it's at times I had it on in the background. But if somebody's listening and they want to recommend, like I would recommend you sit down and you don't binge it, you watch carefully
yeah.
in small
Um,
doses.
I was thinking of analogs to the show. And the first one that really came to mind, and I think this is one that you watched and you really enjoyed, has a similar premise, but a very different feel to it, is Ted Lasso.
Mm.
And Ted Lasso is the story of an American football coach who goes to England to be the coach of a Premier League soccer team. And he has been hired by the boss of the soccer team not to make it successful, but to run it into the ground. He's unaware of this, but the attitude that he has is such a light-hearted, positive, benevolent attitude, and he encounters in a similar way that Sydney encounters with gruff looks of like, "Why are you trying to change us?"
Right.
That times 10 with the players and everybody around him that and the fans that don't want him there. The the difference is that Ted Lasso is definitely a comedy, and the attitude that Ted has is to treat everybody's reluctance as just like an opportunity to spread sunshine. And in The Bear, it's almost opportunities. Let's find opportunities to make things tense. And it ratchets up the tension. It keeps going with the tension.
Mm.
So, Joseph, I don't know if you want to start like diving into the meat and starting to get into to spoilers here. If there's anything you want to say before we get into the conflicts.
Well, I want to chew on that with you a little bit, what
Yeah.
you just said, because I really like using Ted Lasso as a contrast, like you're trying to. I haven't thought too hard about that, but you're right. I mean, so much of them are similar in sense of maybe plot or main conflict. Um, right? There's trying to change the system, resistance to that, and then personal growth. Like Ted Lasso is about the
Yeah,
growth of individual
that's true.
characters.
Yeah.
And I see the bear as the same. Like the
Yeah.
bear is all about the growth of every single character in that
That's a
kitchen.
great point.
Um, but the styles are completely different in terms of every like so many aspects of it. The approach of the leaders, I guess, in either case, and um, the style of the show and the vibe of the show. And one thing that the thing I wanted to chew on a little bit is the last thing you said is it about ratcheting up the intensity? And what I've come to think about the show as I watched it, because the first time I watched it, it's like this is chaos. This is there is just so much going on. But what I've started to see in the show is that the chaos is almost like a trick. And it's not about the chaos and the intensity. It's almost there in order to reveal something else, right? To put characters in situations and see how they react, or to emphasize moments. Maybe we'll kind of get into some spoilers now, but like,
All right, so getting into spoilers now. Okay, let's do it.
yeah, so like the scene where they leave the to-go orders on, and it's just ratchet, and then you get this moment where Carmy just sits down, eats a piece of the donut that Marcus has been working on, and just smiles a little, like he realizes how good it is. And that moment isn't what it is without the chaos, without everything around it. Like that moment is elevated because of what they've done. So there's so many of these things throughout that they create these situations in order to reveal something super, super special. So it's this noise in order to make the quiet or the significance better. So I don't know. That's just something that occurred to me is like um I want to think about that more, but it's I want to say clever, but I don't know if that's the right way to put it yet.
Do you want to
Um
say what?
Clever, but or maybe not clever, but it's masterful. I don't know, is how I feel about it.
All right, so let's get into it. So I've got
Yeah.
kind of the conflicts, the central conflicts here, and kind of outlined a little bit and what's at stake and kind of my view of the characters. And Carmy is the central character of the show. And Carmy, his motivation is something for why he's going back to his brother's restaurant to run the restaurant is something that's kind of revealed a little bit by bit, and becomes the the emotional core of the show at the end of the season one. And where we learn that what has been truly motivating him is that he deeply loved his brother and wanted desperately to have his brother's approval, and his brother apparently had basically cut him off, but had left him the restaurant. And so we're seeing Carmi, who is a very repressed but passionate person who doesn't talk about his emotions, who can keep himself in check in the chaos of a kitchen, but also doesn't communicate his feelings well. And that especially comes through with his sister Sugar, who is also dealing with the suicide of their brother, Mike, and her trying to get him to open up about things, and also trying to convince him not to continue with the restaurant. But he seems to be driven to keep this restaurant going and to make it a success. And we learn because it was his brother's. Um, so that's one conflict there.
Just to
The
add a bit of
other,
color to that too, like
yeah,
everyone's dealing with this loss. Like Michael, the brother, you find out has this great big personality, and everyone loved him.
John
And
Bernthal, love that character, love that
oh,
actor.
yeah, we got to talk about the acting at the end too,
Yeah,
because the
yeah,
acting, all of the characters are just incredible. Um, but he's loved by them all. Like, Carmi has a line where he says, everyone thought they were his best friend. That's how he made
yeah.
you feel. And so it's kind of when it's easy to forget in the kid, but like that's kind of something I was aware of this most recent watching is you kind of have to keep that in mind is like they're all dealing with this loss as a backdrop, and then this restaurant he left them in, which is a bit chaotic and not financially well off, and it's these pieces that they're all having to pick up um in the wake of this loss, and you know everyone's in their head about it a little bit. So that's I just wanted to add that
And
color
then
because
the main
you
character,
Carmi's yeah
yeah, you got Carmi. The character who's the most in his head about it is maybe the antagonist of the show, Richie, cousin Richie, the one
yeah
who's best friends with Mike, who ran the restaurant with or worked with Mike at the restaurant, who's basically thinking almost like he should have gotten the inheritance in the restaurant himself. Uh, But Richie is the one who greets the customers at the door, knows them all. Hey, Golden Dick, come in here. It's like he's raunchy and telling stories while they're supposed to be working to the kitchen staff. And he's the one that kind of brings the Chicago community. This is a family style place, and we've been doing it one way, and we've been surviving well enough without you, Carmi, who's coming in to try to change things. And it seems like he wants to preserve his hang up, as he wants to preserve what Mike has started. He doesn't want to acknowledge that Mike has died. His life, his personal life, is a ruin. He's divorced. He barely talks to his wife. He's not particularly productive. If he were running the place, it'd go downhill real quick. But he has some charm to him, and knows Chicago, and in some ways can help Carmi. And Carmi sometimes recognizes that, like dealing with street gangs who are on their street corner that and intimidating potential customers and so forth. Or um, whipping out a gun when there's a line of cosplay characters coming in to play a video game competition inside the shop that is getting too rowdy, and yelling obscenities at them. Um, but that seems to be the main conflict. Carmi versus Richie. What do you think?
um I'm not sure. Well,
And
so
I don't know how it develops in later seasons,
yeah,
but
yeah,
just in
yeah.
terms of season
No, no,
one.
no. But let's just take season one.
Yeah.
Uh, probably the biggest conflict in season one is new versus old, maybe is the simplest way to put
Well,
it.
that's in terms of like the something thematic, but in terms of in the
Oh,
story and how it manifests itself in the characters and characters in conflict with each other.
right. But it's like it's these dominoes dropping throughout
Yeah, that's
with
true.
each character, right? You got Marcus, you got Tina as and Richie is maybe probably the dominant antagonist Marcus is very easy to win over. He's won over by
Yeah.
I think the end of episode one. Tina has a bit of a long and Richie's kind of that last one to be worked on. Um, yeah, one other conflict I see that
Yeah.
I'm curious your take how it fits into this that I picked up on this last time watching it is this tension between calm and chaos, wanting a desire for calm and the reality of chaos. And the way, or a different way I'll put it maybe is like, 'cause I think everyone experiences this, especially if you work in business. You just want your life to be organized and ordered, and you want to tame the chaos. It's like a goal of so many business people I know.
Tame the bear, you could say.
Tame the bear. But life is messy. And I heard a great quote from a businessman, a very actually a restaurateur, one of my favorites, Danny Meyer, the other day. He said the best piece of advice he got was from his grandfather, who was a great businessman. 'Cause he was complaining about some of his business problems, and his grandfather said to him, "Stop complaining already. Business is problems." Right? The people who are successful in business are the ones who figure out how to deal with the problems and surround themselves with the people that they enjoy doing that with. And I just thought that was like that's you see that like with Carmi, like he mentions that they just need to get the system. They just need to try this
Yeah.
other tweak
He's
and
trying to
he has
bring
some
calm to the chaos that's there.
yes. And
And the Richie is the chaos.
Richie's the chaos there. I mean, but there are just tons of chaos and I
Yeah.
think there's the tension between I don't think he knows this yet, but that life is chaos, or there is an element of messy and chaos that
Yeah.
you have to accept in order to feel that calm. So that's a pretty big um, theme in it too, is that there's that tension back and forth between chaos and calm and those moments and the beauty of the art that is fine dining, but the chaos you have to deal with in order to actually produce it. Um,
Okay. Okay. And so are there any particular moments that you're thinking of, especially where the that clash especially comes up um between somebody who or between Carmi or Sydney, who we haven't mentioned yet. Sydney trying to bring some kind of calm and order in this kind of really hectic world, made even more hectic by the fact that it's disorganized and it's operating on just a system that people are used to, but is not professional, with this guy Richie who doesn't take anything seriously. And I think that's maybe for me like that scene that I referred to earlier with Sydney facing the staff in the meeting, trying to get them to implement this new way, this French chef's way of organizing the kitchen, where well, let's make things professional and real. And they're like, what the heck? No, that's
except
not
if
going to
you
work for us.
remember in that scene,
You know,
she's sarcastic about it too. Like that, I love that scene so much because um I think it does that's a great example of the kind of tension I might be talking about. So Carmi wants to impose this system, right? And he just tells Sydney, go do it. Even though she doesn't believe it's the right thing to do. She can
but
see,
she
I think,
doesn't
right,
believe it's the right thing. She doesn't believe it's the right thing because she doesn't think that they will pick it up, that they will want to do it. She thinks it is the right thing in terms of this is how a kitchen should be run, but she doesn't think she should be the one or it should be instituted for them
correct.
because
But then
yeah,
in her delivery of the instructions, she bleeds that in. Like
yeah, she
she makes
does.
jokes, she makes sarcastic comments. She says, we're gonna do this because somebody told me to. I like she's not delivering it as somebody who's bought into this is the right thing for us to do as a team. And she's right in this, like they're not ready for that. And so there's this, um, even that delivery of it is messy and not well executed. And there's this, you can see, I think what's interesting about that
Yeah.
exposes that kind of tension and conflict is you can see Carmi just has this kind of authoritative approach. If we just do this thing, it'll all be better, right? If we just implement it and impose it, I don't need to convince them. I don't need to convince Sydney. I just need to say, do it, and we'll be good. And it obviously is a disaster. Like
And
it
this
doesn't
goes
go
back
well.
to like his character being somebody who does not communicate well, who reveals to his sister, like, you know, I I've never asked you how you're feeling because I don't
Right.
know how I'm feeling.
Right.
And in that becomes one of the big tensions in the kitchen and leads to the final explosion, that disaster in the restaurant at the end of the season, with the pre-orders that we already mentioned. But his attitude towards Sydney is okay, just yeah, you're right. Just go ahead and change things. That's all he says, and he's expecting it to be done. And Sydney, I think, is all for change. She wants to. And I'm wondering, we're thinking about the main conflicts here, reluctant about Carmi versus Richie. Um, Maybe Carmi versus Sydney is an interesting one as well, because Sydney is definitely on the side of Carmi when it comes to Richie and the kitchen staff. Sydney despises Richie's attitude to his work, and she has conflict with Tina about trying to get her to change the way she's doing things. But those are the one with Tina is kind of quickly resolved. She starts to get to see Tina. She starts to help Tina see a better way of doing her work. And Sydney has this ambition as she starts to become more and more efficacious in the kitchen to really implement thing changes wholesale. In fact, after her first day, uh, I think maybe no, it was after her first week. She was like in trial period, and after her first week, she presents Carmi with this document of
Not a
how
document,
to
a binded proposal.
a binded proposal of how to improve business.
Yeah.
And she's coming from a place where she is very ambitious, but maybe has been impatient in the past. She's got one business that she started and it failed. She maxed out her credit and she's like underwater with her credit because of it. And she's got this impatient ambition that comes through and is an agent of chaos in the kitchen. And is that becomes a clash to Carmi and his desire to bring some stability and to make things work. And she wants to turn this into a really fine restaurant. She wants to serve risotto and braised beef. And that moment where
While
she,
also doing it differently than all the other restaurants they've been in from a culture
yeah,
perspective,
yeah,
less harsh. Um, I'm really glad you brought up this conflict because this is now my one of my favorite conflicts of the show and just dynamics and the one I connected to the most personally, the Sydney Carmi relationship in this season, and it extends into the further because Sydney is the epitome of like the new energetic person that comes into a business or a new environment that wants to do this change, but also has so much to learn. But thinks they know it's like the that folly of youth of like, and man, have I been there. Like in my early 20s, I was so fortunate to get to work directly for the owner of a company, CEO of this, 50-person company. And I was so excited. He was going to let me do changes, and I was ready to go. And and I broke things a lot. Like I did good, but I broke some things. And they do this dynamic so perfectly, right? Because And Marcus has some of that too,
Yep.
right? When you're eager and you're bought in and you want to do it, probably the toughest thing I haven't been in the position of a leader yet in my life, but I can only imagine, like as I've reflected on what my boss did for me, the line you have to walk to fan that flame because it's such a good thing, right? You want that energy, that enthusiasm, but you also know they don't have the experience to know when they're messing up, right? And you see that in the dynamic between Carmi and Sydney, where he's trying to tame it, but he doesn't do a great job because he doesn't communicate very well. But
No, he does not. No.
but he does know, right? He does know there are things wrong. Like so, for a great example is that braised beef recipe. He tells her it's not like it's tremendous, but not perfect. But he doesn't give her any feedback on why.
That's
And so
true. That's true. And
she's just
yep.
confused. She's like, "Well, you just said it was tremendous. Like, let's put it on the menu. Like, let's go." But he knows all of the other context. And just one other color I'll add to this is when you're in that position of youth, like I've been in, you don't see the full context and you don't have the experience yet to see the bigger picture.
Mhm.
And I just love how that's presented in the show. Like, with Marcus, for example, talk about the chaos and the tension. When the pre-order thing's happening, they're like, "Where are the cakes?" And he's still making his donut. Like he is
Oh,
so
Marcus.
he is so zoned in on his work, and he's oblivious to the world around him, which is a beautiful thing, but also in the context of the business, you can't allow that to happen. And so so there's this tension there between Carmi, who actually has experience running world-class kitchens and has gone through the steps and has gone through it all and knows what needs to be done. And any business owner will relate to that. Like there is so much stuff flying at you every day. And when you get somebody that's really enthusiastic and eager, you want to fan that flame, but you're also just trying to keep up. And so the idea of like adding a to-go service might make perfect business sense, but the 20 other things you need to do first before you can take one step. Anyways, it is one of my favorite things that anyone who loves business and who has been there and probably just been in mentor-mentee relationships, I think will love so much about season one and that dynamic. And it's really, really personified so perfectly in Marcus, Sidney, and Hermie trying to like ban this thing, but also teach them.
Yeah, that's great. I like that a lot, and it's kind of making me think there must be some ancient Greek myths about the guy who spent too much time with his donut instead of getting the cakes ready for the lunch rush.
We just call it one of the most beautiful scenes of season one is Marcus screwed up twice big in this season. First time he blows the fuse because he gets behind on his cakes and he has to rush and he ups the speed on the mixer, which blows the
That's
fuse,
true.
brings down the restaurant, and he's just devastated. And Carmi, like for Carmi's faults, this he does beautifully, right? In terms of community, he goes up to Marcus and he says, like, you know, you okay? Like,
No, no, no,
you're
no,
good.
no. Okay, this is one point I want to get to. He
Right,
does.
right, sorry,
I
the
think what he
humor,
says,
yeah.
"Are you good, chef?"
Fresh, good shit.
And this kind of gets into a little bit of maybe the how the personal drama is kind of embedded into the culinary world of communication that they have, where the phrase "Are you good, chef?" is repeated over and over again. Is just like, okay, it could be for like, do you have enough onions, or it could be like, are you suffering a moral mental breakdown right now in the middle of the kitchen? So and that's the way that Carmi knows how to communicate. So he goes up to Mark and says, "Are you good, chef?" And then go for it. Sorry, I won't steal your thunder, but I just want to get that in.
No, no, I'm trying to find. Oh yeah, yeah. And so he says, like they have this whole heart to heart, and Marcus says, "I won't make that mistake again." And Carmi just says, "Yeah, you will." Like you're going to make that mistake again. You're going to make a mistake again, but not because you're you, which was like hit me in the gut as like such a great line because man, I've had like a good mentor knows when to punch you and when to or not to punch you, but when to deliver some like more serious talk
Yeah.
versus when you need a lift, like a little pickup,
Yeah.
and how to recognize when the mistake is an experience versus character flaw, right? And we talked a lot about Carmi being really bad at communication, but there he just nails it.
That
Like he
that is an
knows,
exception. Yeah.
like that's an exception where he knows, like, yeah, those mistakes are not you. And he sees him. He sees, and then the humor, like just the time he says at the end of his, like, something along like, so you want to like continue moping here? He says something more colorful, I think, but like, so you want to mope or you want to come back to work? Like, just lifts him up when he's on the ground, and it's just so perfect. And we get that payoff of, yeah, Marcus screws up again, big time. Um, but not because he's not like because of a virtue, not because of him having some moral deficiency. So
Mhm.
I know that dynamic is some of my favorite in the show of the first season of just seeing that youthful excitement and trying to tame it, but also direct it and channel it into something beautiful.
Yeah, so these are all characters that you come to love each and every one of them. Even Gary, or the bozo who's the repair guy.
Oh, he's my
Uh,
favorite. Fact.
Fact, yeah.
Facts.
So, and they're all characters you're rooting for in a similar ways with like Ted Lasso. There's a motley crew of different people that have different things that they're going through in their life that affect their work, and they bring that to the kitchen. And part of working together so closely, because they're there, what, I don't know, 12 hours a day, and they have family meal together. That part of that is having to deal with those internal conflicts with each other. Um, and one thing that was interesting to me about this is they each have kind of their own brand of psychological challenge.
Hmm.
Uh, so for Carmi, he's repressed. For Sydney, she's got this impatience to prove herself. For Marcus, he's a bit of an obsessive. He's kind of in dreamland a little bit, like, wow, those donuts, I want to make that. And he's oblivious to what's going on around him. And for Richie, he's desperately trying to hold on to a past that makes him feel comfortable, that the loudmouthness is a kind of cover for the deep hurt that he has for the loss of his best friend, and the way his life is kind of crumbling inside or outside of the restaurant.
Can we talk about that a bit?
Yep.
Um, because I don't know if I think that's the central conflict for Richie. I think Richie's central conflict is he feels like he's got nothing left in this world. He's worthless, he's lost everything. I think the changing of the city, the changing of everything, why it's so triggering for him is because that was his only thing he had, are the stories he tells, the history of the location. That's at least how he perceives it. He doesn't think, like he says to Carmen at the end, "You're all I have," right? In this, I think, second last episode, or the last episode. And so, he's the bad news person to his ex-wife, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
His daughter asks, "Why is your last name Bad News?" And it's heartbreaking because you get to see him talk to his daughter, and and I think we could talk about all of Richie's virtues because I think there are some incredible, like he's incredible at some things, but you can tell he does not know them. He does not think he's worth anything, and this is the only thing he has is this like comfortable place that's changing. The neighborhood's changing. That bar he talks about that he didn't even go to because he had disagreements with the owner, but it's closed and he doesn't like that. It just feels like everything is crumbling and he's got nothing. Like there is literally nothing he can do. And Sydney man, she pins that like she rips. She did not lead him very well in that last or in that chaos scene. Like she pinpoints that and you know almost breaks him, I think. So I don't know what you think about that. Is maybe that's still consistent with what you were thinking, but
Yeah, so
um,
you're bringing up the maybe one of my favorite episodes, the one where he tells the same story three times. It's the
right,
episode about meeting Bill Murray.
right, where Mikey tells it, and
Yeah, and it's rooted. The story is rooted in the one flashback we get of Mikey, of the brother, and we see how charismatic he is. And what's striking is Richie, who is the one who is charismatic in the kitchen, telling stories, preventing people from getting work done, infuriating Carmi and Sydney, because he's doing so, but talking over them. He's actually taking a back seat in this flashback, and it's Mike who's got
mm,
the kind of charisma, and it's Mike who sets him up for the punchline, and then he turned around and who did we see? And he like hands it off, and he says, "All right, who did we see, Richie?" And then Richie says, "Yeah, it was Bill Murray," and we could see the admiration that he has for Mike,
right.
and he tells that story two more times, once on a date, and the date doesn't care, is more concerned, like, what, you were out at a bar at 6:45 a.m. And then he tells it again to Sydney, with a little bit less gusto, but still trying to relive, be the Mike presence that he misses desperately. And I think this kind of gentrification that's happening. Oh, what is it? There's a new
I
a
know the name was Sweet
fancy
Greens.
sweet greens coming that's coming in, and the neighborhood is changing. The neighborhood changing is the leaving, the transitioning, the disappearance of Mike and that life that he had when it was good for him, when it was fun, and he's trying to hold on to that. And I love that you point out that scene, that moment, after he's bailed out of jail by Carmi, and that one phone call that he leaves to as a voice
Oh,
message to his wife, just to say, just to kind of give an apology, but also kind of an acknowledgement that, yeah, there's a gulf between us, that we uh, you're like you're not part of my life. And when he tells Carmi, "You're the only person I've got, you're the only one I've got," it's his moment of realization where now in his life Mike is gone, and that culminates in and kind of the the payoff at the end of the show, where we got a hint of it, that note that initially Richie found, like in the first couple of episodes, that was addressed to Carmi, and he's about to leave it for him, but then puts it back, hides it back, and pulls it back out and gives it to him. And he tells Carmi, "I didn't want to give this to you because it'd mean he's dead. He does not want to acknowledge that he needs to move on." And
hmm.
at that moment, he does. And then that gets us to, well, the the family recipe of spaghetti and everything, and which was something I was not expecting. Dough, not the kind you make donuts with, but lots of money, that brings up questions, that brings up a future, and maybe my favorite moment of the entire first season.
Mm, okay.
Um, so Carmi has the moment where, before he opens the letter, he reaches out to Sydney, who had quit, and he tells her, like you brought up, what was missing from the recipe of the braised beef: acid. You need to add more acid. And that he's kind of trying to communicate, trying not to be the tough, mean boss that he had when he was in the high culinary world, and he breaks open to her to have her come back, and she comes back and she finds them in the middle of like opening up these cans of tomato, all covered in tomato with these lumps of cash. And he, as when she starts to realize what's going on, he looks up at her and starts to describe the restaurant of their dreams. All right, we'll have two tops and booths, and we'll have this dinner service, and we'll have so and so and so and so, and they are both on the same page. It's just natural. They've been like that the whole time. As he's realizing, uh, or has realized, but now is just naturally kind of communicating to her, this is what you mean to me, and we're just like making plans for the future naturally now that we've got this, because this is both what we wanted. We want to make a wonderful restaurant, and now we're not just treading water. You have dreams, Sydney. I have dreams too, and now we're going to make it happen. So that naturalness that they have with each other at the end as they're communicating each other, the kind of big plans that they're going to have for this windfall,
Mm.
as that might have been my favorite scene.
Mm. One thing in the context of that scene, so earlier in Carmi's great monologue he has at the beginning of that episode, I think it's in that monologue he mentions that him and his brother had plans of opening a restaurant and they had the vision, the vibe all set up. And I don't know the answer to this, so I'll just raise it as a question in case you have thoughts. Is Sydney taking the place of the brother and what role is she playing in his life? Because they're very different, obviously, like Sydney compared to Mikey, at least of what we know. But it's almost like what struck me in that last scene is like, oh, are all three of them on the same page in terms of the restaurant of their dreams? Like, is Carmi says that they had the vibe, the name of the restaurant, and then
Mhm.
he describes it to Sydney. He's describing a restaurant, and I'm wondering, is that what him and Mikey wanted? And she asks, "What are we going to call it?" And he says, "Well, he doesn't answer, but you find out after it's the bear."
Mhm.
Um, and so that's just an open question I started thinking about after watching it the most recent time um, is there a connection there, or is it, yeah, is that just the transition of his life? Like,
So maybe in terms of, okay, Sid, he's somebody he gets to work with very closely, as he might have worked with closely with Mikey, but I don't know that she takes the place psychologically of
no,
Mikey for him, because the final shot that we get of season one is Mikey's smiling face.
right,
And we can maybe imagine him saying the catchphrase "Let it rip," that that would imbue Carmi with passion, with enthusiasm. But that final scene is also a recognition of why this was all set up. That this note with here's where to find the money, essentially, and the fact that he left it for him was Mikey telling Carmi, I'm not just leaving you a restaurant, I'm leaving you the opportunity to create your own restaurant.
right. And that's what was, yeah, I mean, it really hit me this time watching that scene because you also earlier in the episode you get Carmi asking the question like, did he even care at all? Right,
Yeah.
and that's like the question throughout all season one
And we
is,
think you think maybe Mikey's a drug dealer that's been paying out to gangs or something.
yeah, and he's left them this mess and the
Yeah,
pieces to pick up, and did he even care about this? And
yeah,
he just left us all broken.
yeah.
And does even like that's like he cut apart from Carmi's perspective. I've been cut out of his life. Does he even care about me? This guy that Carmi worshipped him, and that sucks to think like this guy I worship doesn't even care, and that's the silver lining is like and just a beautiful idea that yeah, Mikey had some problems, obviously, right? He
Yeah.
had some struggles, and you get little tastes of it. Tina tell the story of Mikey being really despondent, and Carmi saying, "Was that? Oh, that's what he was like." And she says, "No, the reason I remember it is that wasn't what he was like." And so you get little glimpses of we see him as this really amazing personality, but obviously something went happened for him to kill himself. And so I know that's why that last scene's so beautiful because even with his demons, he still does want Carmi to succeed, and he still, you know, tried to actually not leave Carmi with a max and secretly stash
He
a few
loves
hundred
his
thousand
brother. He
dollars.
loves his brother,
He loves his brother.
and Carmi has been desperately wanting the love of his brother and thinking that he did not have it, and he
Yeah.
does have it. Um, as we wrap up this discussing kind of the ideas and the characters and their motivations and conflicts, is there anything you want to say more about how this how the story affects you personally, or how do you personally connect to particular characters, as you've already indicated some and your time working and for a CEO and
Yeah, I mean it hits me on so many levels that I love. Like it touches on so many. I've mentioned I love Chicago as a city. And so I just love seeing Chicago presented in later seasons. They do it so well, like so many times. It's just this theme. It is this love letter to Chicago. I love cooking and I love going to nice restaurants. And so I've become very obsessed with the idea of hospitality and unreasonable hospitality. And so that's pregnant in the show. I love how deliberate everything is. Every episode, I don't know if you noticed this, but almost every episode's a different length. It's and almost it's somewhat different styles, and it gets even more so in future seasons. Every episode is whatever it needs to be, which I've never seen done in TV before. It doesn't have to be a set length or a set style. It's whatever the artist needs it to be in that moment, or for the story and to drive it, which I just love. It just emphasizes how deliberate every decision is. There are clues that you get throughout that if you're careful and you're attentive to come back in later seasons and later episodes and round out. So I love all of that. And then I love the personal growth and character stories. One thing just to make the personal connection and tie that up. Like I see so much of myself in Sydney. Like I just one aspect that really stood out to me this time too was like the craziness of her just showing up one day to this beef restaurant. And to remember those scenes, but like, or how familiar you are with the fine dining world, but the names of the restaurant that she lists are like heavy hitters. Like
Mhm.
Alinea is like a 3-star Michelin. Like she's worked at these incredible restaurants and she's at the Bear. And for me, I've always had this approach. I don't know when it started or why it started, but if I find somebody that I admire that I want to learn from, I
Mm.
just try and throw myself at them. Like that's how you and I think started becoming like I just loved what you were doing. I love what Lisa Van Dam was doing. I love what my old boss like I just try and surround myself and just see how I can be useful to them and go through those green experiences that she go. So there's so much I love about that story that I'm sure a lot of people will be able to relate to. And it's just done in such a beautiful way too. In a hysterical way for me. Like I just find it's so funny. I just can't help but laughing at it. And also, so that's where the nourishment comes from is it takes so many values I care about and present them in such a beautiful and essentialized way in these wonderful, rich characters. And the acting is just phenomenal. John Bernthal's a standout. I love the Richie character. We know him from Andor too, and he's a standout there. So this was hopefully my love letter to the bear and reason for why other people should give it a shot.
Uh,
But
well,
yeah.
I definitely can see you and Sydney, and I love that, and it's making me reflect on who am I most like, uh, and I think I see myself a lot in Marcus.
Mm,
Like, okay, oh, you know what? I'm making my donut and ignoring the. The fact that we're opening in 8 minutes, I see myself in Carmi. Like I'm excited about really doing things well, and I've got a team, but sometimes I don't communicate as well and clearly as I wish I did. Maybe sometimes I also see myself in Richie. Uh, you know what? I've got things under control, and this is the way we do things around here. And what? Things are kind of what? You're going to change things up a little bit. And I think that's the way I kind of see all these characters. They all are passionate about something in one way, but there is a psychological hang up, a different psychological hang up that they each have to work through or deal with each other. Are you good, chef? In the workplace in order for it to make it work because the natural state of things for them when everything is smoothed out is that brief conversation that Carmi and Sydney have envisioning the future restaurant at the end. So,
So,
any,
question,
yeah,
are you glad you watched it?
oh, absolutely. Um, and it's grown on me. Um, I'd say I'm starting to see a little bit more of the rhythm of the storytelling, and getting a feel for that. You mentioned that each episode is kind of a different length, where it's kind of like, okay, here's our purpose for this episode. Also, each episode feels pretty self-contained. So it's a little bit different than, say, Andor or even Ted Lasso in that sense. But it's not also not just a sitcom where each episode you kind of have a vague thread. There is a firm thread going through, and it has to do more with, okay, let's unearth motivations of characters and what they're going through and what they've gone through, and also showing a progressive development for each of the characters. It's not necessarily a plot thread that runs through it, like
Mm,
Ted Lasso, where you're constantly waiting. When is Ted going to find out that his boss has set him up for failure? And is he going to succeed? And if he succeeds, how is his boss going to react to that? So it's not something that you're envisioning, okay, where is the story going for the plot, but more for let's get
sorry,
to
you just blew
know
my
the
mind.
characters. Yeah.
You just blew my mind into that's such a freaking great observation because what just the line that just hit me or the statement I just thought in my head is you're right. I don't care about what happens to the restaurant. I care about what happens to each character. I'm not I'm not watching to find out the plot story in terms of um do they get the bear under control? Because that's you're never gonna get a restaurant under control or whatever. Like there's always, but it's where what is each character going to do? Like what's not like how are they going to grow and resolve and what's the story of the character? And you're right, like what's the threads that you get, and one thing I love so much are all these little clues you're getting into the people.
Yeah.
And the you get little glimpses of history and there's richness there and you want to know more about these backstories and they reveal some of it now and but it's all about the people and the threads
Mhm.
of the individual characters and oh that's such a good articulation of what this whole show is about like
So Joseph, at some point I am going to watch season two, but I would
yes.
love to hear the case that you'd make for like watching it sooner rather than later, or why you, because I've heard like season two is like when it gets even better than season one, but without giving anything away, we
Okay,
can
I'll
already
make a
kind of
pitch.
imagine like they're going to have their restaurant, a new restaurant called the Bear and so forth. But where does this go in a broad sense that you say, yes, you got to watch this?
So I'll say a couple things. One, to relate it to something you're familiar with, I think we both had this experience with Andor. It starts slow, right? And then you start to get hooked into it towards the end. And then when you rewatch it, it's just
Mhm.
You see it. And I think there's a similar case for the Bear, right? Like the first time I watched the season, I enjoyed it, but once I saw season two, I then became obsessed and then went back and I'm obsessed with all of the seasons now. So there's this case of like a little bit of trust me, like it's um it takes some time to enjoy. But in terms of specifically season two, what's the motivation to watch or what can I pitch you and sell you on? I think if you enjoyed the characters and those threads that we were just talking about, and seeing the conflicts between the characters and the demons that each character is battling and trying to overcome and trying to figure out, there is lots more of that. And you mentioned earlier, and I didn't want to correct you at like you said, Army is front and center. One thing I love about the show is there is no front and center, especially as it gets into future seasons. Every character, almost like at least some of the main core, like four or five, are each given so much room to be seen
Mhm.
and for their stories to unfold. And so if you maybe resonated with Marcus more or Sydney more or Richie, and you're worried, oh, you're just going to see Carmi's journey, all I'll say is you get to see everyone's journey, and they're
Okay.
wonderful. And it's four seasons of these threads maturing, and it's so intentional and deliberate that if you're getting a glimpse now, just imagine them building. And one thing I was reflecting on is season four was maybe my favorite, but I realized it couldn't be my favorite without the whole thing.
Yeah.
It's only my favorite because it is the maturing of all of these threads coming, just getting to their end. Not ends. There's still more, but like getting to their next step. But it's building as you go. So that's my. I don't know if I've convinced you, and I would love to do season two recap or even episode breakdowns with you. So those, I just want to talk about this with you more and see you go through season two. So that's my
Awesome.
pitch.
Joseph, this was a lot of fun. Thank you for bringing your enthusiasm and your insights. Uh, and I really, really enjoyed the bear, and I'm looking forward to diving into more episodes. And thank you everybody for watching or listening. And I'll see you guys next time. Bye.
Thank you.